Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. I would like to remind you that yesterday the Ukrainians attacked the city of Elektrostal. More precisely, the Ukrainians struck this warehouse and destroyed this warehouse to ruins. So this is the video that was published this morning, and here we can see the consequences of attack. Indeed, the biggest warehouse, one of the biggest warehouses on the territory of Russia, was destroyed, was wiped out by Ukrainians as a result of a massive attack. And of course, the Russians during the next hours struck back. The Russians used hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles and were mainly attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. This morning, pro-Ukrainian sources published this article, and according to this article, the Russians during the night were using 166 means of attack, and according to information we have, the Russians were using 125 drones and 141 missiles of different types, 10 anti-ship missiles Turkon, 25 ballistic missiles of Iskander MS-400 type, 3 anti-ship missiles Onyx, and 3 guided air missiles Ha-59. As we discussed, the Russians were mainly attacking the city of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and we have lots of maps published on this matter. For example, this is the first map that was published during the night between the 18th and the 19th of July of 2026, and here we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine. As you can see, the Russians were using at least 4 different launching sites. The Russians were attacking the territory of Kyiv from the Bryansk region, from the Kursk region, and from the Rostov region. As a result of attack, lots of explosions were recorded through the capital of Ukraine, and the Russians were attacking mainly warehouses, military infrastructure, and so on. And this morning we received lots of videos on this matter. In this video we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine using ballistic missiles. As you can see, the Russians used drones, but the Russians were using less drones than expected, and the Russians were using drones probably just to overload Ukraine's air defense forces. So this is another video that was published this morning on the 19th of July of 2026, where you can see how exactly the Russians were bombing the city of Kyiv using the largest number of missiles since the beginning of the special military operation. Once again, lots of explosions were recorded, lots of damages the Russians managed to deal, lots of warehouses were destroyed and reduced to ruins. And this morning we start receiving, after the overnight attack ended, this morning we start receiving lots of updates about the consequences of attack. Let's discuss them in details. And these are the first videos that were published this morning. Here we can see ruins, here we can see different parts of the city of Kyiv destroyed and reduced to ruins as a result of the overnight attack. Here we can see a building construction and a road that was damaged significantly by the Russians during the overnight attack. And in this video we can see the building itself. As you can see, the building was damaged badly by the Russians. And these are the common views of what exactly was happening during the night. Of course, we have more updates on this matter. For example, during the night, the Russians attacked this facility. As for this facility, very difficult to say what exactly the Russians were attacking. The only thing we have is a fire anomaly from this area. But when talking about from this satellite picture, we can see lots of industrial zones, lots of buildings that the Ukrainians could use for drone production purposes. Moving further, and let's talk about the western parts of Ukraine. As for this territory, we have lots of different facilities that were attacked by Russians. So this is one of the facilities that was attacked, and as you can see, there is something like Kyiv Central Design Bureau. There are lots of facilities, enterprises, and according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, all these enterprises were involved in drone production process. Furthermore, moving to the western parts of Ukraine, here we have more facilities and more fire anomalies, and here we have more pictures where we can see the damage that the Russians managed to deal, and fire crews trying to extinguish the fire. Here we have another video, another warehouse destroyed by Russians. As for this territory, just a fire anomaly was recorded, yet pro-Ukrainian sources haven't published anything about pictures with trucks with fire crews extinguishing the fire. But when talking about this satellite picture, we can see that this is one of the biggest warehouse, one of the biggest post office terminal that was wiped out by Russians. And here we have lots of trucks, lots of buildings, lots of vehicles that are present on the territory of this facility. And according to a fire anomaly, this territory was destroyed by Russians. Another territory destroyed by Russians is a warehouse to the southwest of the city of Kyiv. We're talking about these facilities. Fire anomaly was recorded. This is the first thing, and lots of pictures were also recorded through this territory. And according to these pictures, we can see that a fire anomaly and that this warehouse was completely destroyed. Moving further, and another fire anomaly was recorded through this territory. And as for this facility, this is an auto parts shop, auto parts, some enterprise, and as you can see, this auto parts enterprise was completely destroyed. So as you can see, the Ukrainians attacked probably one of the biggest warehouses on the territory of Russia during the previous 48 hours, and the Russians wiped out from two to five warehouses through the territory of the city of Kyiv. Another important thing worth attention is that according to most maps that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources, we see just strikes in the direction of the city of Kyiv, but according to different sources, the Russians were attacking not just the city of Kyiv, but also the city of Odesa. As for the city of Odesa, the Russians were using Onyx missiles, Ha-31 missiles, and the Russians were using Ha-59 missiles. Lots of explosions were recorded through the southwestern parts of Ukraine, through the city of Odesa, and telling the truth, the Russians finished with the city of Kyiv. The Russians ended their massive attack, or probably a mega attack, another mega attack on the territory of the city of Kyiv. And the Russians this morning on the 19th of July of 2026 shift their focus further in the southern direction, and the Russians began attacking the city of Odesa. And right now, when I'm making this video, we have reports, we are receiving reports that the Russians attacked the city of Odesa using dozens of missiles. As for the city of Odesa, and as of the moment when I started making this video, we have just pictures. We have lots of pictures with explosions through the city. We have lots of pictures of explosions through the territory in front of the city of Odesa. We're talking about the Black Sea. As for this area of Odesa, we have just the video published by pro-Russian sources, and in this video we can see how the Russians managed to discover a missile launching infrastructure of Ukraine, the Neptune launching system, and the Russians attacked this Neptune launching system with multiple Iskander strikes. So most likely during the day we will continue receiving updates about the situation in the area of the Odesa. The Russians most likely during the upcoming day, during the 19th of July of 2026, will carry out more strikes through this area. Another important thing worth attention is the political updates. Once again, as we discussed yesterday, the Ukrainians yesterday attacked the biggest warehouse on the territory of Russia just probably with the purpose to force Ukrainians to stop thinking about the commander-in-chief of the armed forces Ukraine, Syrskyi, because we see that the population of Ukraine are trying to make the situation when the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, would be forced to replace Syrskyi. So he said that yesterday and today there were many consultations. Of course, I hear what people are saying today. I had a long conversation with Fedorov. I also spoke today with Alexander Syrskyi. Discussions regarding the army will be worked out. So as of now, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, still hasn't made a decision who is going to be the next minister of defense and what Zelensky is going to do with the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Syrskyi. But basically, Zelensky are not able to do anything with him because Syrskyi is too strong. He's a very strong strong political person and figure. Meanwhile, there are lots of protests through the territory of Ukraine were recorded during the second day of protests. In this video, we can see hundreds, maybe thousands of Ukrainians in the evening before the beginning of the massive attack, protesting against Syrskyi and trying to force Zelensky to dismiss this person. And as we can see, there are more and more people every day join the protest activity of Ukraine, and telling the truth, now these people are demanding just one thing: to dismiss Syrskyi. But telling the truth, if Zelensky doesn't make this decision very soon, most likely the protesters will be able or will change their demands, and their demands can be increased, and they can also concern the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, as well. So the situation is quite difficult. Thousands of people began protesting against Syrskyi, and most likely today this situation will continue, and this situation will continue until Zelensky makes his final decision regarding Syrskyi and Fedorov. But telling the truth, once again, Syrskyi is a very strong person, and most likely it will be very difficult to replace him. And if anybody tries to replace him, most likely he will retaliate, and he has something to show, probably. Now let's move further. Let's discuss more things about Ukraine. And first, let's talk about the situation on the ground, where both the Russians and the Ukrainians continue their offensive operations. First, let's talk about the Orekhov direction. During the previous 36 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded between the villages of Novopavlovka and Malotokmachka. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians, as you can see, maintaining their lines and getting closer and closer to the Orekhov agglomeration. Furthermore, moving to the Dnipro direction, very heavy clashes. We continue recording very heavy clashes between the rivers of Mokre, Yali, and Volcha. Here we have additional changes on the ground. These days we have lots of changes in this area. First day we change everything in Ukraine's favor. The second day we adjust everything back in the Russian favor. So which means that there is still very heavy clashes, and there are still both Ukrainian soldiers and Russian soldiers. As we can see, according to information we have, the Ukrainians have strong control over these three villages: Novokhvatska, Tolstovo, Podubne. So these territories are under complete Ukraine control, and at the same time we see that the Russians are trying to attack Andreevka, Klivtsovo from the south and from the north, probably trying to cut the Ukrainians in this area from supply and support. So there are very heavy clashes, as you can see, and this is a very important battle both for Russians and for the Ukrainians, because from this position we will understand how the things are going to develop during the autumn military campaign in the direction of the city of Pavlograd. Moving further, and let's talk about the Dobropolye direction. During the previous 12 hours, the Minister of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, Gerasimov, reported that the Russians, as a result of clashes, established complete control over the village by the name of Mirna. Based on the report published by the Minister of Defense, we adjusted the map. This is the end of the 18th of July, and this is the beginning of the 19th of July of 2026. Furthermore, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation reported that currently the clashes are about to be finished for the villages of Shevchenka, Svitla, and most likely Vodyanska. So most likely in coming days we will see additional changes on the ground in this area, and we will color the map something like this. So we see that the Russians are getting closer and closer to the city of Dobropolye from the south. As for the Konstantinovka direction, we haven't received anything special, as well as about the city of Slaviansk. The only thing worth attention about the city of Konstantinovka is that yesterday pro-Ukrainian sources published a video generated by AI how Ukrainians were raising flags through different parts of the city. This was noted by pro-Russian and by pro-Ukrainian sources, so that is why still the city of Konstantinovka under strong control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and meanwhile pro-Ukrainian sources claimed that the city of Konstantinovka was completely recaptured by the armed forces of Ukraine. So as you can see, there are still lots of misunderstandings about the situation in this area. Moving further, the northern directions. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians continued attacking gas stations along MO3 road between the cities of Kharkiv and Izum. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing in the Sumy direction, and during the previous 12 hours, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. First of all, the Russians managed to take under complete control the territory between the rivers of Psyol and Psyol. So there are two parts of this river, and the territory between the rivers was captured by Russians, and these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 18th of July, and this is the beginning of the 19th of July of 2026. The Russians, as you can see, managed to establish a very strong foothold on this side of the river, and it seems that the Russians are going to move further and to cross the river with the purpose to begin clashes for the village of Velika Rybica. If Russians take under complete control the village of Velika Rybica, then the Russians will face no barriers to advance further in the western direction towards the city of Sumy itself. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions in the Krasnopolye direction along the border. The Russians are widening the front line, moving in the southwestern direction towards the settlement of Mizonovka, which is located between the settlements of Krasnopolye and Kharkiv. Furthermore, the Russians improved their positions through the northern Sumy direction. Here we have additional changes on the ground published by different sources, and we have a geolocation just now added, confirming Russian control over the territory in this pocket. The Russians, as we can see, accelerate their offensive operation in the direction of the city of Sumy, and these changes are telling us that the city of Sumy is one of the most important objectives of the armed forces of the Russian Federation for this period of time. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.